My topic today is social casino. If you've seen this presentation before, cover kind of a lot of a recap, the history, market sizing, KPIs, some of the key trends. And today, I'm going to look back at some of the things we've seen over the past 5 years, some of the key themes, and then provide some predictions, some outlook for the next 3. So again, I won't bore you with the About Us slide, but needless to say, if you're in this industry, if you are looking at this industry for the first time and doing some research, we produce a lot of research reports on this sector, and so please get in contact with us if you find some of the numbers here useful today and want to learn more about this industry. So 5 key trends over the past 5 years. This is obviously not all of them, but this, we've been focusing and researching on this sector for since 2012, 2013, and so I thought back, what were some of the key things to me that really stood out? And I think this list is an interesting one and worth diving into. Number 1, the shift to mobile. Number 2, Polticas Dominance. Number 3, gaming suppliers and land-based slot content. Number 4, the M&A wave that has taken a hold of this industry. And then number 5, steady as she goes, and I will get into what that means. For those who have trouble seeing the chart below here, this is the market size of the social casino industry from 2012 to present day 2017. When we started tracking this industry, it was about a $1.3 billion a year market. That's a global number. The dark blue represents revenues generated on desktop, which is predominantly Facebook, while the light blue is mobile. And as you can see, the industry has grown at a very healthy 5-year CAGR, calendarized growth rate of 28% over the last 5 years, with most of that growth being driven by the mobile channel. As you can see, Facebook desktop revenues essentially peaked for social casino in around 2014. So I'm going to dive down into each of these key points here and touch upon, again, these key trends that we've witnessed over the past 5 years. So number 1, the shift to mobile. So the shift to mobile in retrospect now is the most obvious of trends, right? You don't need to be an expert analyst to have noticed this trend has taken over a lot of media and entertainment that we've seen. But what's easy to forget is during the 2012-2013 years, Facebook really was the dominant platform for not only social games, but especially social casino games. In this category, social casino games, there were a lot of companies making a lot of money on Facebook. And frankly, those companies that pivoted too late, who did not properly allocate resources to mobile, really have missed out on, obviously, as you saw, the big growth trend on mobile. As we point out here in the chart again, 2013, Facebook was about 60% of the market. Today it represents about 23%. Again, really driven by growth on mobile. Missed opportunities. Again, I'm not trying to pick on these companies, but it is interesting to go back and look at, who were some of the leaders or who were some of those companies in the top 15, top 20 that really, frankly, you don't hear about anymore. Blue Shell Games, they had about 1.3% market share. They are not around anymore. DWIP, just under 1%. Plumi, just over 1.2%. High Five Games, just under 3%. But again, all these companies have lost quite a bit of market share, aren't around, or have been acquired now, and again, are below the scale and size they were back in 2013. And I would argue largely because of missing that big rising tide, that big shift to mobile. So certainly the shift to mobile, big key trend over the past 5 years. Number 2, Polticas Dominance. So again, Poltica has been essentially the category leader in this space since we've been covering it. But what's interesting is if you look on this chart, back in 2013, they were 15%. Again, the leader, but Double Down and Zynga really weren't that far away from them. Fast forward to today, this is calendar year 2017. We just finished collecting all these numbers. Poltica is now at 27% market share. Look at the gap. Look how much that has widened from their competitors, and a lot of their competitors, mind you, have consolidated. So they've just done a phenomenal job in this category. If you focus, if you're involved in this space, you obviously know the name, but some people new to this industry don't realize just how dominant they've been. Some statistics here: they've grown at 41% annual CAGR over the last 4 years versus the industry at 22%. They have the #1 grossing slot game, they have the #1 grossing bingo game, and they have the #2 grossing poker game. EBITDA margins for them are over 40%. They're highly, highly profitable. And oh, by the way, they had a $4.4 billion exit in 2016, making it the largest social casino exit to date. What's actually really interesting and fascinating is, I think, if you run the numbers today, you apply the same multiple based on the 2017, 2018 numbers, they could probably get upwards of $6 billion. So the company continues to grow. It's an absolute dominant force in this industry. Theme trend number 3, gaming suppliers and land-based content. And what we're talking about here is a lot of the gaming equipment suppliers have entered this space over the last few years in a number of different ways, through M&A, through strategic partnerships, or licensing. And really what's happened is their land-based content has served as a key competitive advantage, allowing them to drive superior monetization rates, retention, and a host of other things. And they've been very successful in this space. Aristocrat, Scientific Games, IGT, they've all been, among the top 10 social casino publishers. The chart on the right here, I wanted to provide some more context, some more numbers around, what does this monetization look like? Well, here I've got ARPDAU. These are estimations, but they should be pretty close for 4 of the leading companies: Aristocrat, which owns Product Madness, Scientific Games, Double Down, which was formerly owned by IGT, and then High Five Games. And if you look at the ARPDAU, that's in the left-hand column, 2013, and then the ARPDAU today, you can see just a dramatic uplift from all these companies. Now, some of that's just due to optimization among the product, better content, but a lot of it is bringing that land-based content that works in the actual casinos in the real world, implementing that, porting that online, and again, it just drives a much, much higher overall monetization. Product Madness, a 250% uplift over the past 4 years. Scientific Games, around 45-50%. Double Down, 30%. High Five Games, 45%. So just a really, really powerful tool for all these companies to have, which has helped drive substantial revenue growth for these companies. And oh, by the way, I do not think we've reached a ceiling for those ARPDAU numbers. I think those ARPDAU numbers are going to continue to go higher. 3, 4, 5 years from now, if I'm still doing these presentations, I would not be surprised to see, $1 plus ARPDAUs from some of these companies. So again, the gaming suppliers and land-based content, big theme for over the past 5 years. Point number 4, the mergers and acquisition wave, which has really taken over this industry. Over $8 billion worth of transactions, consolidations over the last 6 years. Again, there's some very big ones in there. Obviously, Caesar's sale of Poltica was 4.4, so just about half of that. But some other big transactions. Most recently, Aristocrat acquiring Big Fish for almost $1 billion. W acquiring Double Down for just under $1 billion. So every year, pretty much since this industry really started going, 2012, we've seen substantial consolidation. And what's interesting is you're starting to see repeat companies being sold off. Obviously, Double Down initially acquired in 2012 by IGT. And then you'll see up in 2017, again, Double Down now being sold to W Games. Same goes with Polticas, acquired by Caesars in 2011, sold in 2016. Big Fish, more recently acquired by Churchill Downs in 2014, resold in 2017. So a lot of consolidation. It makes sense as the industry matures. The barriers to entry are getting higher. It's largely driven by escalating user acquisition costs. So consolidation theme, we expect it to continue. There's fewer and fewer of these large, mega-sized transactions, but nonetheless, if you look, the consolidation theme continues to play out nicely. Okay, point number 5, steady as she goes. So what do I mean by this? What I'm talking about here is when I did this, when I was putting this report together and kind of thought about things, perhaps one of the biggest surprise over the past 5 years is maybe how little things have actually changed. And I'll give you some context and examples here. The oldest social casino game in the market is Slotomania, and Slotomania is still the biggest and most popular social casino game today. Zynga's oldest game in its portfolio is Zynga Poker. It remains its most popular game in its portfolio in terms of revenue generation, and is the largest social poker game in the market. Polticas, as I showed back in a number of charts, they were, the category leader in 2012. They still are today, albeit that gap has widened some. Growth has been just amazingly consistent and steady. We have not seen a single down quarter on a sequential basis since we've started tracking this industry. The industry has largely avoided any meaningful regulation or negative press in the media. That was a concern a number of years ago. And despite some early attention and predictions, social casino never really converged with the real money gaming category. It remains an independent sector and really no cannibalization in our mind between RMG and social casino. For a number of years, if you attended these conferences, there's a lot of panels and tracks about this big wave, this big convergence. Social casino is going to be the gateway to real money gaming. And again, that really hasn't played out. And then final point is the land-based casino operators. While they've increased their exposure today largely through B2B white label products, they still remain largely underexposed and underpenetrated to this area. And I guess the final theme, and another debate if you've been following and tracking this industry as long as we have, this idea about the land-based slot content being exclusive to the gaming equipment suppliers. What I mean by that is the IGTs, Scientific Games, Aristocrats of the world, they do not license out that content. That has not changed. So steady as she goes. As much as things have changed, they really haven't changed that much in the grand scheme of things. Okay, moving on now to some predictions, some key trends over the next 5 years. I've got 3 of them for you here. Number 1, it's all about conversion and monetization. Number 2, small changes, lots of them equals big rewards. And then number 3, crossing over and morphing into other sectors. Here we've got our forecast for the industry over the next 5 years. The CAGR is obviously slowing down. The sector has just gotten that much bigger. But nonetheless, we still predict this industry will be around that $6.5 billion mark in the next 5 years. So outlook, number 1, conversion and monetization. So if you've been tracking this industry like we have, or you're involved with it, you're a publisher, most people realize or know that a lot of the growth that's occurring right now isn't driven by an expanding user base. It's being driven by monetization. 2 charts here which provide an example. You've got DAU trends for 5 of the biggest social casino companies on the left, and then you've got ARPDAU trends for those same 5 on the right. Obviously, DAUs pretty constant and steady. ARPDAU just taking off. So our view is this dynamic is not really going to change. One of the ways you drive higher ARPDAU, higher monetization, is a higher conversion rate. And what's interesting is we believe the social casino industry as a whole, again, this is an approximation and it can obviously vary among the different companies, but the conversion rate is somewhere in that 3% mark. So they're only converting about 3% of users to payers. But if you look at some other markets, mainly in Asia, there's evidence to point that 3% number can move up and can move up pretty substantially. In China, some of the data that we've seen shows 7 to 10% paying player conversion rates. Japan, 10 to 12%. Korea, 12 to 15%. I read a report, a statistic, again, unverified, but says World of Tanks, one of the most popular MMO games out there, converts somewhere around 25% of its users, which is a staggering number. But the idea and the point here is there is some benchmarks, and there is some reason to believe that 3%, the paying player conversion rates for social casino, should naturally rise over the coming years, which again will drive higher monetization, which will be a big growth driver for the industry, especially in light of a stagnant or flattening user base. Outlook number 2, small changes can lead to big rewards. I'll go through this pretty quickly here, but the idea here is that improving conversion, monetization, retention, it's easy for me to come up here and say this and put this on a slide. It's much, much harder to do, to execute upon this. So 2 points here. Number 1, rising tide should lift all boats. Our thesis is that as consumers, and especially younger generations, become increasingly more comfortable with this whole freemium model, this is going to help all forms of entertainment and in-app purchases and social casino to help further monetize. I didn't add it in here, but advertising as well. In-game advertising is also another way to monetize that audience. This is kind of a natural secular trend that we see occurring that is going to help not only social casino, but really the entire mobile game ecosystem. Point number 2, small changes can lead to big rewards. This is specific to social casino, and what we're talking about here is you don't necessarily have to be this big disruptive player in this industry to be successful. In other words, a lot of the companies that are growing, a lot of the new successful companies of the past year or two, it's not about, again, this huge innovative disruptive idea. It's making constant tweaks, lots of new features, constantly testing things. Optimization is the big buzzword. Drilling down more in terms of specifics, what we've seen companies that really excel at live operations, predictive analytics, machine learning, constantly A/B testing. These are the companies that we, again, are the ones that are driving growth quarter and quarter out. And we think this is, as the industry starts to mature, is a big theme and something to watch for. Those companies that can excel at this will be the ones that are successful in the future. Okay, last one, crossing over into other sectors. And so by this we mean, we think social casino companies are beginning to expand a little bit beyond the traditional casino genre. There's a couple, there's some evidence of this. We think Aristocrat's acquisition of Plarium, again, this is a mid-core RPG gaming company. They make no casino games, as well as Big Fish. They do obviously have casino, but also offer some other categories. Is an example of, again, a dominant leading social casino company looking to expand into other genres. Poltica has made some acquisitions, some small ones outside of casino. They've tweaked their one of their games to kind of incorporate puzzles. Play Studios has a partnership with King Digital. Companies like Merc are trying to do some crossover appeal by incorporating RPG elements into a classic slot game. So all this is showing, again, the industry is exploring ways to expand the audience, to grow beyond the traditional slot, poker, and business and bingo model, to try to attract some new demographics and explore other categories. And you're also seeing it vice versa. And the most obvious one out there is loot boxes. This is a big topic in the media, but a loot box is basically just a very simple slot machine. And yet this tool, as a lot of publishers have figured out, is a great way to monetize the audience. And so again, they're taking some of the themes that have made social casino, obviously the sector it is today, and putting those into their games. So those are our three outlooks. And with that, I think we have about 4 or 5 minutes for questions, if anyone has any. Thank you very much.
Adam, quick question. I noticed you mentioned in the beginning of your presentation about Aristocrat's acquisition of Big Fish. So how does that stack up against Polticas now for total market share with a combination of those two companies?
Yep, it's pretty easy. You can take this chart, Product Madness. Well, Big Fish isn't on there, but they'll be the number 2 player. So Product Madness has about 7% share. I think Big Fish was around 5%. So I'll put them at 12%. So still well below Polticas, but the new number 2 player in this industry. That obviously doesn't include Plarium, any Plarium revenues. This is social casino earlier. What's for Aristocrat though, they've made a big bet on digital and interactive. If you add up all their digital revenues, so the entire Big Fish company, Product Madness, and Plarium, they're going to do over we think about $1.2 billion in digital revenues on a pro forma basis this year, and it will be their largest category for the company. So their digital business will generate more revenues than any of their other slot business, any of the land-based businesses in 2018. So big bet by them on just the digital market in general.
Hey, Adam. Great presentation. I come from the console and PC gaming side, and you mentioned loot boxes at the end. With legislators and lawmakers trying to get involved in somehow labeling or maybe controlling the use of loot boxes in games, what impact, if any, do you see happening in this industry?
Yeah, so the idea of regulation has come up a lot in this sector. The industry has done a good job, I would say, to date in terms of kind of controlling the narrative to an extent. I mean, my belief is it'd be very, very difficult to regulate or outright ban social casino. I mean, it's the same monetization mechanics at the end of the day as you find in any type of freemium mobile game. But nonetheless, when you have a slot machine or if you had kids spending lots of money or things like that, you could obviously paint a negative picture. I don't know what happens with the whole loot box debate. It obviously, is kind of ongoing to the extent that they have to pull it out or it creates, headwinds for companies like Electronic Arts. That's an obvious negative. And so how do you kind of balance that in terms of trying to improve your monetization with, keeping kind of the audience happy?
As we see the ARPDAU increasing year over year, what type of shift are we seeing in player demographics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the demographics for social casino, you have to kind of look at it among the different categories. So with slots, it's predominantly females, 45, 50 years plus. Poker skews more male and younger than that. Bingo's on the female spectrum of things. Mobile has tended to attract a younger audience, but not dramatically. I would say the companies where we're really seeing a trend change or shift in demographics would be some of the new incumbents like Huge Games and Merca. Both those companies, Huge has done a great job in terms of really incorporating a lot of social elements, these live tournaments. Merca with the much darker gothic RPG feel has attracted some males, and so it's hard to say if those users, I don't necessarily think they're spending more. I think what's happened, honestly, is these games have become way more engaging, right? They're much more fun to play. They incorporate so many more features, so many more things. They've become just these big kind of ongoing live operations in many extent. And so in my mind, the entertainment value per dollar today is better than it was a few years ago. And so the ARPDAU is going up, but you have to also consider that in the context of the product that you're consuming today is much better as well.
We have one final question over there.
Adam, great presentation. Quick question. If you look from 2013 to 2017, there's still about 4 or 5 players that take up half the market. Yep. And maybe it's even become even bigger with bigger market share for the top-heavy players. What's the biggest barrier to entry to a newcomer like a Huge or a Merca or someone else perhaps in this room? And to the extent it's marketing dollar, what % do you think they spend in marketing from a revenue basis?
Yeah, so you've answered your question. It's marketing, 100%. It's incredibly expensive to do paid user acquisition. There's a lot of companies that have been successful. My friends over at Bidalgo do a great job in terms of UA in this sector, and there's others as well. But yeah, it becomes prohibitively expensive for new companies, for new startups to really do paid user acquisition at scale to compete with some of the larger companies. And so it's not necessarily, I don't want to give a dollar amount out, but it's not unusual to see companies spend over 50% of their gross revenues on user acquisition.
Adam, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.